Welcome to day 2 of the Experts Top Picks from TSG, discussing the Microsoft Inspire conference and what we've learned from the second day. So one of the top things, the messages that was in the keynote from yesterday was response, recovery and reimagine, which is addressing this positive outlook in light of recent events and embracing the new. So Rory, what are your thoughts on this?
Great, thanks, Amelia. I think it really resonated. I think everyone who was there and heard the delivery, it didn't feel like kind of a corporate pitch from Microsoft. It was very much how they wanted to help using their platform, and I think they have sufficiently evidenced over the 2 days about how their platform, particularly Power Platform, with DataFlex sitting behind that, how that can respond very quickly. I know yesterday in our previous talk we discussed about how we delivered in less than 48 hours to respond to a number of our customers, and I think that was sort of the really credible response from Microsoft, is that piece of reimagining and not just doing what it is you did before. I know, Stephen, you mentioned yesterday a great example around famous winery where they did the case study back in January, and then they went back again because they had to sort of reimagine the way their business worked, moving completely from their distribution channels to electronic points of sale. So a completely different way of working.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, the response and recovery piece was kind of what I was expecting them to say, just in terms of, obviously in terms of applied technology people, we do have skills and products that can help customers right now get online and work remotely, but the reimagine piece on that really kind of resonated, like you say, just around let's try and figure out what, in this period where we're having to cut straight through process and get to action to help customers out in all sectors, let's try and see what stuff we can take into the new normal, define the new normal, and then let's just leave behind the stuff that doesn't make sense anymore. So that was a theme that kind of carried on throughout the whole day.
Do you not think it's going to be one of the most challenging things to take forward? Is it's not about how can we efficiently upgrade customers? How do we help them get to better, more robust infrastructure and systems? This is about saying, how do we as your Microsoft partner inspire you to reimagine your business? It kind of goes beyond the technical at this point, and that's where I think the part for us is, we perhaps need to retrain and educate in it and empower our guys to be able to challenge our customers to say, look, you need to be aware of what's going on around you and you need to act quickly. It was a very different call to action, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Some really interesting thoughts there, and we discussed a lot about the application side of things yesterday, but the last day there's been quite a lot around infrastructure. Andrew, do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the announcements?
Yeah, sure. So obviously there's been a lot of sessions over the last couple of days. I think there's been around 500 in total. So there's been an awful lot of stuff to try and take in. But I think probably the main one that jumped out in terms of reimagining, not a new product as such, but a big step forward out of the announcements was the Azure Stack HCI product. That's been available previously almost as an adaptation of Windows Server 2019. It's now been completely re-engineered as a new generation product. It's its own operating system, and it's although it's partly Azure Stack labeled product names, it's slightly different to the other ones that are already on the market. The Azure Stack Hub is probably the biggest one, and that's generally seen as something that you would pop into your own data center. It's essentially your own private Azure node. You can use it for air gapping, for data sovereignty. You can essentially run it as an offline Azure platform, running your own resources on your own premises. The other end of that is the Azure Stack Edge appliances, which tend to be mainly focused around where you're actually collecting data for your business. So some of the examples they gave were the rugged devices that they have out in farms and dairies and places like that. Just doing that sort of local hardware accelerated machine learning out in the field. And this HCI sort of comes in from a slightly different angle. It's got some of the features of both, but they're almost pitching it as a replacement for aging Hyper-V servers in branch locations or even in your own data center, where rather than just having a Windows Server 2019 box and the administration and the updating and the licensing and all that comes with that, this is essentially a rewritten operating system just for that use case where it's fully integrated with Microsoft Azure. So any of the VMs that you end up spinning out, it's essentially a hypervisor cluster in a box. You have a whole set of disks attached, you have a whole set of network ports attached, and everything is configured as from a software defined level. So you can create your own arrays of disks, you create your own network switches, and it's all then presented in your Azure portal as just another node, essentially. And I think one of the big use cases that that they were pitching that towards was particularly intensive SQL Server loads. Some of the benchmarking I think Intel carried out, Microsoft at the very least, they quoted something like 13.7 million IOPS on a 12-node cluster, which is absolutely fantastic. It's something that's very hard to get close to with other technology, and it's just having that tied so closely to the Azure platform. It's just allows everything to be handled by the same management console as well. So any of the policies that you've got, any of the ARM templates that you want to roll out, even just migration of kit between, migration of VMs between sites, or DR recovery sort of spanning clusters between different offices. It just provides you with a much more advanced, sort of a fully managed hypervisor, and the only bit you need to worry about is the VMs. You can move the VMs to Azure, you can move the VMs to your on-prem kit, and it's that's probably the closest thing to a new product announcement that I've seen today.
And I guess the key bit in that as well, isn't it, is that it wasn't just for one particular type of device. It's pretty much agnostic. I'm sure as we start building in our labs, we'll start to see that there are going to be there are going to be some limitations in some areas, but actually overall this sort of gives every customer an ability to start getting into that cloud readiness piece. We've done a number of proof of concepts with customers where they've had to make that initial leap, whereas this effectively allows them to do that from the existing kit they've got right now, and potentially there might even be some sort of price advantages. We haven't seen the pricing yet, but there were lots of nods towards the potential pricing. So there could be some commercial advantage here in making the move as well.
That's one of the big things about them re-engineering it as its own operating system, is the fact that it can now be installed on your own x86 hardware. I think there are approval. There's a hardware compatibility list essentially, but there's work from Dell, there's work from HP, there's work from Lenovo. There's going to be quite a stack of devices to be able to choose from there as well.
And I guess, Andy, as well, one of the big announcements was around Windows Virtual Desktop, and there is a link here in terms of trying to get that one architected solution from Microsoft has often been a challenge previously. Often we're looking at lots of different tools working together, but can you explain a little bit about Windows Virtual Desktop and perhaps how that links to sort of HCI and the Azure platform?
Yeah, certainly. So VDI has always been a little bit of a strange one, because it's certainly, RDS and VDI have traditionally gone hand in hand as sort of alternatives on running on Windows Server. The RDS side of things is essentially trying to repurpose the server operating system towards end users. You get compatibility issues with applications, you get issues with profiles and things like that. So what Microsoft have tried to do is just reimagine VDI again for Azure and for cloud, and just completely remove away that whole VDI infrastructure management from the end user. By sticking it into Azure, they're able to scale it fast, even with sort of graphically intense apps. One of the examples I gave, I think, was CAD development, which has always traditionally been really hard on local resources. But the disruption that I can't remember the name of the company now, but there was a big COVID disruption to an organization that ended up deploying it in a matter of days to thousands of machines. It's ideal for that quick turnaround, just to be able to say, all right, okay, well, I need 200 workstations in for this office.
Yeah, Jennifer, the same example. I know they show Mock McDonald, who are a really big international engineering firm with lots of design capabilities that are needed across the world, and for them to be able to use it and to deploy, I think it's thousands of devices very quickly is it's a really a big test. That's everything from project management software, computer aided design, the ability to kind of collaborate quickly. You could see how they'd used it successfully. And I guess the bit here with with HCI is that even if that weren't to work, or if you can't get an element of legacy software or a line of business system to work, then you can still run that locally, but then still have it as part of your Azure setup. So you can have your users now working within Azure, having the power of Azure to power your desktop experience, and anything else from a collaboration experience in Microsoft 365, and anything else from storage and some of the bits around Project Cortex and other bits that look really exciting. But then you're not limited having to have a completely new solution for any sort of line of business system that can sit there locally on HCI. So it's sort of delivering really on the promise of edge computing that's been promised and outside of enterprise hasn't been available.
Yeah, essentially caching some of Azure to your local data center if you need to. It gives you that extra sort of responsiveness and gets around some of the latency issues of some of the use cases. One of the interesting things I did mention around the Windows Virtual Desktop side of things, though, is because it's they've almost re-engineered it a little bit with some of the technology from FS Logics that they've acquired recently, and they've completely broken away the profile and the sort of the disk attachment into a separate thing from the VM. So again, that helps massively with the scalability and being able to even simple things like just being able to power off the VMs when they're not used overnight. That's a cost saving straight away to a customer.
Definitely. Yeah, I haven't heard many people talk about that. That's a massive part of it, isn't it? In fact, you can spin that up again when it's needed, and you're paying per second of computing power. So it's if you can fold it down. But also, I guess from the FS Logic capacity, is that piece of being able to have multiple images, because one of the things previously that was a problem with RDS and was that often it was managing the number of profiles. So you'd have someone perhaps in a finance team that would need a certain image, someone who was in a field team would need a different image, someone perhaps in a sales team would need different applications to run. So suddenly you've got this big task of working out which image do you have, what applications do you need access to, and managing that has often required multiple people inside an IT team, or perhaps giving that to a partner as a managed service. Whereas having that now within WVD, or this Windows Virtual Desktop, and the capability that's there will still be an overhead, but actually that overhead will in some cases pay for itself from a licensing perspective, and there's other advantages, but also giving you that ability to access from anywhere on many different devices. So we saw a beauty parade of many different devices that were out there. A lot of them fairly expensive. I don't know, Andrew, if you've got a view on that, but a lot of what I expected were lots of sort of dumb terminals that where perhaps small businesses could make a saving, but it felt like a lot of nice kit was shown, but it was all over $1,000, right? Yeah, no, exactly, and I don't think that's often the case with these kind of announcements as well. You are talking retail price, aren't you? It's RRP, and channels are often pricing things differently with the power of the bulk purchasing and things like that. So it's it's one of those things you always see with the launch of products like this, but hopefully the situation will evolve as we go. Yeah, I think
there was one $300 thin device, wasn't there? It was one $300 thing, but the rest of it, there were high-end gaming PCs and stuff. Yeah. But some of those issues with multiple profiles and stuff, those go back to the beginnings of multiple remote users on a single machine. So it's great that VDI and VDI solves that at scale now. And some of that other stuff with powering the machines off, that brings into their management tools as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and especially if any customer is looking for things around in terms of the ability to go carbon neutral, and a lot of companies are really pushing for that. And I know it sounds simple, but devices are a big element of that. We've all seen thin terminals on as replacements for desktop devices, but actually now thin laptops are something that we've all seen in personal life in terms of Chromebook and things like that are incredibly quick, incredibly easy to use for an end user, but because it's backed up by the performance elsewhere, not on the actual device itself. So to have that in a business to business context is quite exciting to see where that gets to. I mean, we're looking at the first release, so it already looks as it will deliver real advantage, but backing Microsoft as we have done previously, seeing where that might go over the next couple of years is quite exciting.
Definitely.
Fantastic. And I think, Andrew, did you attend some sessions around the Power Platform as well that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, so again, there was more about the Power Platform. They announced Dataflex as the renamed CDS yesterday, and they've already updated some of their diagrams that they share out a lot. So they've had this diagram of the Power Platform for a while now. Used to have 3 boxes on the top. It's now got all 4: Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agent. And then they used to sit CDS down the bottom there, but they're now putting Dataflex or Dataflex Pro in its place with its new name. And they talked about how fast the Power Platform has been growing across all industries. More than 3.7 million monthly active citizen developers, people creating apps. And they had more examples of how some businesses had made massive changes, huge savings and increases in productivity by moving from shared spreadsheets to Power Apps that people had built on the Power Platform. And there were citizen developers building them. 2.7 times year-on-year growth in active users. And then if you mix that with a couple of the other sessions, it was developed faster than ever before, which comes back to some of the rapid responses that people have been able to make to get users suddenly moved remotely and working. That the Power Platform is across all of these things. So every developer, anyone who's using low code and no code can be doing parts of it. And then there are bits where you engage the professional developers and they do their things. And actually some of that's inherent in some of the solutions at TSG. Several of the solutions at TSG build and deliver as well. So there were some very good sessions covering, there was a couple of sessions covering different aspects of that.
Fantastic. And I think, Stephen, you attended a session on Power BI. What did you take from that?
Yeah, I did. More what I took from that is just, again, how quickly it's advancing, both in terms of user numbers, partner numbers, but also in the kind of recognition of the product itself, just in terms of the power that it's got now. When I was at Inspire last year or the year before, it was very much sort of in the middle of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, sort of moving its way to the top right, but it was underpowered in quite a few areas to be considered as a true sort of BI platform. But if I just show you this, both now Forrester in Q3 2019 and Gartner this year in February have got Microsoft top right, with quite a lot of clear blue water between the rest, which is really just testament to how far it's come. Some other stats: 96% of Fortune 500 companies are using Power BI, and then this here just shows the kind of growth curve. So Power BI is a bit of a ubiquitous name really now. I feel like it's been around forever, but it's been just under 5 years, and in that 5 years it's gone from kind of nowhere, sort of an exponential kind of growth. So talking about having 19,000 plus partners having sold Power BI in the last 12 months, and then they're onboarding partners at an astonishing rate, 7,000 almost in the last year. So a huge amount of growth, both in scale and in the power of the platform. And the kind of image that I was left with that I really liked from that session was navigating 2020 without data is a bit like driving without headlights, wipers, or a GPS, which it certainly feels like at the moment. So the more we can kind of unlock the insights and the power of the data that's already sitting there for customers, the better.
Do you not think there's an interesting point as well with the Fortune 500 piece? It was mentioned a lot, right across the board, not just for the Power BI, and it is great that it's been recognised for its advancements. But this Fortune 500 piece feels like Microsoft trying to establish itself as the true enterprise platform. But in a way, that really feels like coming from where they were, in terms of small business server and bits around, CRM for it, trying to compete against Salesforce. And now, they are the superior technology platform, and it's almost like they want to prove it. But actually, in some ways, that kind of makes it seem as if it's not accessible to small and medium-sized businesses, and that this is an enterprise platform. But actually, they've got some brilliant examples of startups and smaller businesses that are taking it on. But we didn't see as much of that. It felt like a bit of a beauty parade in a lot of sessions, and I completely get that. But I mean, especially for our marketplace with small to medium-sized businesses, there's a lot to take away. HCI is brilliant if they're talking about Fujitsu data centers. That's lovely. But actually, how about small engineering firms that are using that for robustness, and they're working around the world, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and I've just seen more of that.
Yeah, and I really like Justin Althoff, the guy that's always doing the kind of day in the life of type case studies. But my one criticism is I think I've seen the same day in the life of from another DHL 10 times, and you're just looking at it going, well, that's fantastic that robot's now been programmed at a cost of 5 million quid. But in terms of the actual day-to-day stories, you actually get a lot more of that in the individual sessions. So a lot of the stuff that we were hearing about at Power BI level and in the kind of lower level was, dashboard in a day, get CRM live in a day and a half, Business Central, get that live in 3-4 days. That's the real stuff, that we kind of care about to get people moving faster.
And it's really, especially, there was a great dairy example, like Andy, you mentioned it earlier, where it was fantastic how they're using IoT. They're helping sort of get lots of smaller franchises working together to find out the best ways of optimizing their from farm to store, which was great. But it would have been fantastic to think of a similar example, but perhaps for a smaller cooperative that's now taking on the big boys, that kind of thing, because that's completely possible with the technology. But it felt at times that it was sort of justifying the enterprise presence. But they certainly haven't lost their credentials from a small to medium-sized business. Just quickly as well, I mean, I don't know, the same image was played a lot over the 2 days. In fact, it was it made it into part of the the keynote, but it does fit really nicely. One of the things I love the most, though, was that Power Platform was a community-made term that came out of CRM-UG and other community groups that's now been adopted by Microsoft, but it helps explain the difference between Microsoft 365, Power Platform, two separate things, Dynamics, Azure, and then security and identity with AD, etc. All together, it's that Microsoft story, and it is compelling as the full platform, isn't it? That's the bit I think we got again and again. I think Satya Nadella talked about how all of it is deliberately architected together, and that's something we could be critical of maybe 5 years ago and before, where some of these pieces that have been built have been bought rather than built, didn't talk to each other. Whereas actually what we can see now is a comprehensive platform, and DataFlex, which is as I say, is a new term, but actually it's been an ongoing 8-year project, hasn't it, and behind the scenes of getting the different systems to talk to each other. So having your CRM and your Business Central talking to each other has been, a number of connectors have been tried, but now we've got the schema sitting underneath the Power Platform and Dynamics that is incredibly powerful.
I think we've covered quite a lot of ground there. And just before we move on to your key takeaways from the conference, is there anything else that piqued your interest during the sessions from day 2?
So at the end of the, I was going to say, just at the end of the Power BI session, though, they did also talk about customer insights, and Dynamics 365 Customer Insights is the newest part of Dynamics. In traditional installs, in traditional environments, you'd have to try and bring all sorts of data in from everywhere into CRM in the old days, and try and match it all up through some sort of ETL tool, fit it together so you could do anything on it. Customer Insights takes a bunch of that burden away. It uses Power Query from Power BI on the Power Platform to let you define rules to unify the data from which it builds insights, and then it can create actionable insights from there, and it can put those actions back into the Power Platform so you can see them again inside CRM. And again, they talked with the big players who've gone already out with some of this stuff, Chipotle, Walgreens, Boots, but not all commercials. UNICEF were using it for their volunteers as well.
Yeah, and they talked in that session about the purpose of that really today is to try and chart what the new buyer behaviour is, because it was originally envisaged as joining up the world of a shopper arriving in a retail store, as well as giving that same experience or a joined experience to that same shopper going to your web store. And really, it's kind of arrived at the right time, joining those two worlds up and giving you insights in a world where that dynamic's totally upside down. So a lot of the stories they were saying is a lot of new inquiries around that to say help. We've gone from 80% in store and 20% to the completely other way around. So they've timed that one well.
Fantastic. So we'll just go around and I'll start with you, Rory. What your key takeaways from the 2 days of the conference have been?
Yeah, I think we mentioned at the top of this, in terms of the reimagine piece, I think that's the bit that, you know, I think that's for me. I need to take that away and see how we can work better to get our customers to reimagine using the tools. They're very capable, able to do that. So I think we need to think more around that business analysis piece and that business consultancy. You know, we've always been great with the technology. We've always given good, impartial advice. But I think what we now need to do is to help perhaps become more challenging to customers, because we've seen a number of customers react really quickly. And I think we're in this position now where it will be survival of the fittest to some degree. And I think for us to play that role, we need to become more of a challenging partner. And just if I can have a second, just really quickly, we didn't mention ARC, and I just think it's something that's worth, Andy and I mentioned really quickly, which is it might be more for us as a managed services partner, but I think for a customer to know that with this release that's come out, we've had something previously called Lighthouse. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Yep. So we've had Lighthouse in the ability to kind of manage a customer's Azure environment, so we can see multiple customers one on top of the other, and we can kind of report on that and have that going into our live operations team. Now what ARC will allow us to do is something similar, but as we just talked about before, with that ability of edge computing. So what do you have currently on site, on a customer site? What do you have in your data center? What do you have perhaps in other clouds, that are around and Azure? That gives us that total visibility of a customer setup, which again, it's very early doors. We don't have a full view on pricing just yet, but the capability for us as a managed services partner to be credible at, right up to, from small business to enterprise scale, it's been a really powerful tool for us. So that's something that we're going to be getting into evaluating over the next few weeks. So that's quite exciting too. And that's it, I promise, no more. No.
Time's up. Moving on to Stephen.
Yeah, just to echo Rory, the thing I will probably take away is that reimagine piece, and just trying to understand not just the challenging thing, but almost the kind of responsibility that we've got as technologists now. Pretty much every conversation I'm having with customers has some kind of pain point in there because of the COVID situation, that because they aren't technologists is blatantly obvious to me and the people on the call that, well, of course you would solve that with a Power App, or of course you would do this. And like Rory said, I think we need to probably challenge ourselves to be on the front foot more with that and get that message out far and wide, because we do have a responsibility, because the technology does have the answers to a lot of this stuff. Definitely.
Andrew Fox?
Yes, so Rory's already touched on it slightly there, but the whole management piece for us, although it's maybe not one of the exciting things for our customers, it does mean that we can far better serve them by operating in a far more joined up manner and being able to respond more quickly. ARC sort of really does add, a lot of the announcements this week around the management tools have been integration of ARC and Lighthouse and Sentinel as well, the security suite. The fact that you can then reach from that one cloud portal down throughout an entire customer's estate, manage those devices from the same tools, move resources between them, even into competitor clouds. You can manage AWS VMs through Azure with some of this. It just means that we can take a much more holistic view of the customer. We can be right there with an immediate response. Even things like the Lighthouse authentication for us means that we're already signed in, we're already authenticated against the customer's tenant. You don't have that delay of us trying to get onto the platform to help a customer. We can just be straight in there, helping them right away, and it just gives us far greater data insight into other places we can help as well.
Fantastic, and we'll finish up with you, Andrew Wolf.
Well, I'm going to mention two things, I think. So you saw on Rory's diagram, you had security, compliance, and identity underneath. And although they talk a lot about the impressive solutions, they say so many times over the last 2 days, those three things sit there and underpin and protect everything. And we talked about how most of these products now talk together and work together so much better than when they were discrete buy-ins. And so they've got this one overall structure that builds them all together. And then because I build solutions a lot with Dynamics and on the Power Platform, design and build them, just the continual growth of the Power Platform. Customer insights, when we started talking to our customers about it 7-8 months ago, there weren't real examples out there. There was just the pretend coffee shop that Microsoft seemed to have invented. So it's great that we've now got real examples that, okay, they're big examples, but we can see how they can scale down to fit all sorts of other businesses. And I think that's one of my one of the exciting areas I've got from this as well.
Well, it's been a great 2 days, and I really hope that these insights have helped our customers a little bit to understand what we've covered. And thanks, guys.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Same time next year.